So, since we are here with Integral Life, I'm a big fan of talking about lineage, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about the lineage of this work and make some acknowledgments here. Is the first person I want to really give a shout out to is a Benedictine nun and spiritual director named Suzanne Zurcher. And Suzanne worked with, and this is how I work with the Enneagram, is I'm not only working with my own practice, but I'm working with client practices, and I teach classes a lot. And so we are constantly saying, okay, what supports people not only in love and work, which would be kind of a Freud way of looking at this kind of thing. So not only in love and work, but what supports in spiritual practice and inner practice. And from Suzanne Zurcher, she was working with her clients and she started to see patterns in the centers. And when I got a hold of this material, it was like the scales fell from my eyes. I've been working with the Enneagram in the narrative tradition with Helen Palmer by that time for a guy over like 12 years. And I was really struck with how she saw the centers. It kind of blew me away. I also want to talk about that Jack Killen. He's certified in the narrative tradition. He actually worked at the NIH in his day job overseeing biomedical research programs in the NIH. And I bounced this material off him a lot because he was working with Dan Siegel, who does a lot with mindfulness and studying family interactions with how do children attach in these kind of primary ways. And how do our attachment experiences influence behavior, emotions, autobiographical memory, and narrative? So there's a lot of overlays here. And I'm always concerned, like where did this material come from? And how can I use it with my clients and in my own inner practice? So I want to talk a little bit about the centers. So you'll see here that there are 3 centers from the Enneagram perspective, but they are also there from the perspective of biological evolution. And I also, Nikki's managing the chat. So if you have anything you want to ask, if I start, because right now I'm feeling kind of this need to give you some information before we get started with practice. So if you have anything you want to say in the chat, feel free, and Nikki will manage that with you. So in biological evolution, the deepest roots of what you and I perceive as consciousness can be traced back to like the simplest of organisms, of how do we just differentiate between self and not self. And the reason I want to talk about this is because when I first got started in the Enneagram, I beat myself up a lot. I am a social 7 on the Enneagram, so it's called the sacrifice instinct. It kind of looks like a more 2-ish 7. So the idealization of my type structure is all around avoidance of pain, suffering, boredom, and limitations. The idealization is I'm okay. So from a social perspective, the social group, like all of you, what I'm noticing right now, my heart is beating, all right? I've got a little bit of a tightness in my solar plexus, and I can feel myself wanting to see you to make you okay. That is the instinctual biological protective reaction in my body of my type. Now, when I first got a hold of the Enneagram, I thought I want to be a kick-ass teacher. I idealized what a teacher would look like. And for me, it was Helen Palmer, who was my teacher, and David Daniels. And so what happens is that I'm constantly setting up an ideal that I'm going to reach the mountaintop, that I'm going to get there, and I'm not going to really have my type with me anymore. It's going to be so loosened because my spiritual practice will be so rich, so deep, and I totally idealize the spiritual practice. And where that got me in trouble is life kept intercepting. Okay, so no matter how much I practiced, no matter how much I worked on myself, life kept coming in. And I noticed this part of myself that still habitually wanted to make everybody else okay. And I could feel it in my body. And so when I got a hold of this material, and when you start doing all this, I did a lot of study with Thomas Hubel and understanding trauma, working with, got trained in somatic experiencing with Peter Levine. And you start seeing that, oh my God, we live in these bodies. And these this ability to differentiate serves a protective function. You know, you body types 8, 9, and 1, your need for power and control is a protective function, and it's a sustaining function. You need it for survival, for your mammalian survival, because at the end of the day, we're mammals. And so, what happens with body types and any of us, we start to perceive what's bad and what's good inside of ourselves. All right. And so, it's like if you look at it from a perspective of our evolutionary functions, it's the evolutionary antecedents of consciousness. Okay. So, if we look at, there's 7 primary emotions that a guy named Antonio Damasio, or excuse me, Jack Panskep identified. They are fear, head types, rage, body types, panic, meaning wanting connection, heart types. Those are the 3 afflictive emotions from the Buddhist perspective, in the Buddhist pantheon. Then we have seeking, care, playfulness, and lust. Every one of us has it, and it lives in our body. Fear, rage, and panic are the primary negative emotional systems, and those are the ones I'm going to associate with the Enneagram today. I see these centers driven by powerful, important emotional systems, and they serve 3 different needs. These are the big 3. But we also have positive emotions like seeking, care, play, and lust. All right. And they're also governed by cognitive emotional structures of our type. So I really feel like the traditional notion of the Enneagram is just misses some of these important pieces. And it misses this kind of end product of evolution of where we are now. We have to just be really kind to ourselves around some of this material. So the other piece that I really saw was the heart center. The heart center, and you and I have it. If you're, and if you'd be, it'd be helpful if you would put your name, if you can, and your Enneagram type into the, if Nikki, if you can help them do that, if anybody needs help to rename yourself, or you click on your name, rename yourself, and include your Enneagram type. So that can be helpful, you know, as Nikki puts you into breakout rooms. But the heart center is really important, and it's really about the root system for attachment. So if you're a type 2, 3, and 4, you are seeking connection. All right. Now I'm a head type. I seek connection too, but it's not dominant. But we have to understand infants are hardwired to learn everything they can about the world in order to get along, including how to use these beautiful capacities for emotion that we're born with. And I feel like when I first learned spiritual practice, I felt like I had to detach from all of my emotions. I had to kind of pull away from all of my emotions and disidentify with them. Well, what do I do when they're running the show inside my body? I'm going to hold 1 minute. Oh, we can't do breakouts. Okay. All right. I agree. So we're not going to be able to do breakouts. So that's actually okay with me. And I'm going to open the chat here. Type 1, type 5, a 4, 2, 7. Okay. Can we please not interrupt? Oopsie days, sorry. Can we not interrupt you unless totally necessary? Yeah. Because I really would love to teach this piece to you because I think it's really important. So if we can look at this, that we live in this foundational system where we need to be connected to one another. And that doesn't matter what type you are. If you're a head type, if you're 5, for instance, and somebody posted they're a 5, you all have an incredibly sensitive nervous system. And I don't think people always realize this about the 5s. And they kind of sit on top of their kind of orientation towards cognition sits on top of a sensitive nervous system. And I've learned too, social 7s, which is what I am, also have an incredibly sensitive nervous system. If you're a social 7, you might also find a predominance of melancholy in your life. But we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But the heart center is really all about connection and image. And think of yourself in junior high. And when you're in junior high, it's really all about, I mean, I think of myself in sixth grade, seventh grade. I moved to Cincinnati from Connecticut. When I was living in Connecticut, I talked like this. I called my brother Paul. And when I move here, I hear that everybody's making fun of my accent. So I'm practicing in the mirror. This is in order to maintain social connection. Call, Paul, ball. I'm trying to talk like everybody else does, to adapt in order to connect with people in my community. Okay. Now, another type might have done something different. It might have even accentuated it that they talk differently from everybody else. For me, I'm looking for social connection. And you can think of yourself in junior high, that time when you're really looking for social connection. So the heart type is about connecting. Now the head type is all about seeking security, safety, certainty, and meaning. All right. So when I'm sitting in my spiritual practice and I have a thought, a lot of times it's wrapped around planning for the future, planning to make somebody okay, planning how I'm going to teach something like today. All right. And my mind habitually goes to planning. And so what happens is that gets compromised is my capacity to be in my body in the present moment. And so when we look at these centers, if we can start understanding that they're adaptations, it helps us be a little bit kinder to ourselves as we move forward with understanding our type structure. Let me just look at the chat here if there's any questions. Okay. So Tina says, I'm an 8 or a 1 or a 6. 8 and a counterphobic 6 are lookalike types, Tina. All right. So the counterphobic 6 looks angrier than the 8 or than the phobic 6. Okay. So that's not an uncommon misunderstanding here.